Good afternoon. Come on. Good afternoon. I'm sort of talking about expectation gaps without wishing to... Are you okay? You okay at the back?
Okay, just indicate if you can't hear and then we'll use...
Or if you don't like it, indicate as well. I run a small organisation called Bryanston Square. We do a lot of work with students, we do a lot of work with parents, we do a lot of work with schools, we do a lot of work with authorities, we do quite a lot of work with government, and we work in the United Kingdom, the United States of America, and Northern Europe. And everywhere I go, same issues. Everywhere, everywhere, everywhere. So a couple of days ago I was in the Czech Republic talking to 600 students who paid for me to go out there to talk to them. Same issues, where's the world of opportunity, what's happening? Day before that I was in Bucharest, same issues. Last week I was in Nottingham talking to 1,000 students, same issues. A couple of weeks ago I was in San Antonio, Texas. Guess what? Same issues. So we're not isolated. And actually what's happened is that the pace of change of the world is moving faster than the pace of change of governmental support systems. Because it takes so ruddy long to have committees and decisions that by the time you've made it, the issue has moved. So I'd like to put it to you that if we try to solve problems in this way, we're always going to be playing catch-up. Always, always, always. And I thought I'd start off just by looking at who we're dealing with. So just remind ourselves, everybody here, once upon a time, was this. Just in case that little girl was being presented with the rejection letters which her father got from various jobs he'd been applying for. No. I think that makes it better, don't you? So somehow, when we look at what happens, and you look at children like this, you say, I wonder where their future is, and you look at them and you say, I wonder where their future is, and we talk about all the reasons and all the stuff, and if you're not careful, you start saying, oh, poor souls, they're born in SW, whatever it is, they can't do anything with their lives. I mean, honestly, I have to tell you, and I'm going to use a word which I'm probably going to get blitzed over, I think that's crap. I don't think where you're born or where you choose to live has any indication about what your life chances are, and if you believe it, then you won't move to those areas either. Just imagine if that was really true, and if you then decided to move to SE19, people would say, oh, well, that's it, you've buggered your life up. You'd say, well, actually, I quite like the house here. Don't be ridiculous. So we have to be very careful. We have to be very, very, very careful in ensuring that every child gets an opportunity of being enthralled and enraptured. Don't you agree? Whether they're at home or at school. And actually, parents need to be enthralled and enraptured. And then as children start becoming adolescents and they start working out who they are, what's their tribe, what tribe to belong to, what clothes should they wear? Let me ask you a question, honestly. How many of you here, honestly, weren't that good at school? I mean, honestly. How many of you here found that what your friends did influenced what you did? So you needed to have the same shoes, the same clothes, and all that sort of stuff. So let's cut through it with building tribes, and schools are tribes. And then we release from schools and we suddenly have to make our own way in society. And some people can't manage it. Because they're in the wrong tribe, they get wrong-footed. So let's make this about people, shall we, rather than data and statistics. And if we go back in time to see what is a construct which we work on, we can go all the way back to Thomas Jefferson, Mount Rushmore. Thomas Jefferson, the second guy on the left, accredited as being the guy who brought in education in the United States for everyone. And if you look at his notes on the state of Virginia, which was in 1767, here it goes, when he started saying we have to have schools for everyone, because we cannot differentiate between people who are poor and people who are not poor. And here it is, we're going to have a school. In each state, we're going to divide it into hundreds. Each school, each state, or each hundred will have a school which will be free. And every 3 years, we'll have a visitor who will choose the boy of best genius and send him to a grammar school. Christ, we even know the names. Grammar school, where he will be taught Greek, Latin, geography, and the higher branches of numerical arithmetic. Hang on, I think I heard that last year coming out of this government. And then after 2 years we will choose the boy of best genius and he will go to a university. And therein we will separate the rubbish from the genius. We will rake the genius from the rubbish and we will separate the learned classes from the labouring classes. 300 years, and we've still got the same words. And I put it to you that that's actually what our construct is designed to do. So where can we go from there? What are we preparing the world for? Are we preparing people for employment? Because that requires two things, doesn't it? It requires an employer and an employee. So if you just grade people who just say, okay, give me a job, tell me what to do, and there aren't any, they're stuffed. So our whole construct is wrong, in entirety. And if we kid ourselves by saying, well, I will pay for somebody to come here and employ people, then that's not sustainable, because somebody else will pay more. So I like to put in income generation is what we're talking about. And I don't think it matters if you're part-time employed or not employed. I don't care how it is, it's income generation. That's what's sustainable. And then we start talking about there are not enough jobs around. It's not like there aren't enough things to be done, is it, ladies and gentlemen? So how do we shift ourselves from making it easy, which is let's get an employer to employ 5,000 people, and let's make it hard, and let's get 5,000 people to work out how to get an income for themselves, which is sustainable. And if you take PISA 2007, PISA, Programme for International Student Assessment, and you have a look at the job roles in society, back in the 70s and 60s, we said what's important is to have highly skilled labour. We need doctors, accountants, lawyers, and all that sort of stuff. It's a bit like raking the genius from the rubbish. And those and in fact, non-routine stuff, which is dealing problem-solving involving people or problem-solving involving data, wasn't so important. The jobs which are decreasing from society are the highly skilled ones. Because if you could automate something, what are you going to automate? Something simple or something complex but routine? And are you going to automate something which is involving cheap labour or expensive labour? So I just wonder, today we have about 25,000 cardiac surgeons unemployed in the world today. Why is that? Because 25, 30 years ago, to do cardiac surgery, we used to break the bones, we used to insert stuff, we used to get into the abdomen. Today, we go through a stent, or a couple of days ago I was talking to a surgeon in Bucharest, actually, a Parisian surgeon using robotic surgery. He performed an operation on the USS Nimitz. You know, the aircraft carrier? The USS Nimitz was in the Pacific Ocean, and he was in his office in Paris. So, ladies and gentlemen, the world is moving very fast. And actually what we need is we need people who can solve problems. And I bet all of you, when you recruit someone, you're looking for someone who's just interesting, dynamic, and doesn't do things the same old way. So where can we go from that? So if you look at PISA, quite quickly stated, this highlights the concerns that if students learn merely to memorise and reproduce knowledge and skills, they risk being prepared only for jobs that are in fact increasingly disappearing from labour markets. In other words, the kind of skills that are easy to teach and easy to test are no longer sufficient to prepare young people for the future. The thing is, we know that. Anybody here has recruited someone who's got sparkling GCSEs and can't talk properly, or can't write a letter, or can't make a phone call, and you go, well actually, it's interesting, but irrelevant. And if I was to ask all of you now to go through what GCSEs you've got in order to determine who's the more clever, you would probably want to attack me. Has anybody else found that the skill sets which you demonstrated at school, the way you went about doing things at school, are completely different from the way you do things now? So maybe we're preparing people in the wrong way, and maybe when we look at kids who are not succeeding, it's actually us who are not succeeding, not the kids. Maybe. So where can that take us? Well, if that's what education was in 1875, and that's what it was in 1904, and that's what a British school looked like in 1932, and that's what one looked like in 1947, and that's what one looked like in 1965, and this is what one looked like in 2010, and this is what a university looks like today, you can sort of see that that may not be the best way. And then I'd like to look at history versus destiny, because all of you here have got a history. That history enabled you to be in this room, sitting on this seat, looking at that screen, except for those of you who've got a lectern which is in the way, which is surprising in a conference centre, isn't it? That there's a lectern prompt in the way of the screen. But you know, whoa, these guys are experts. So as we get here, that's a history which has brought you here. And when you leave this seat, that's a destiny from this life which you can create at the moment that you leave the seat. And it's not my choice of what you do afterwards, it's yours, and only yours. And that takes us into some interesting places, because in today's world it's not just what you know, is it? But it's also who you know. And more importantly, it's how you know. Has anyone here ever found that you know someone and you wish you didn't? And I put it to you, if you know 10,000 people and they all think you're a raving loony, it's probably better not to know anybody. So let's have a look. This kid will always be known as the boy who stuck his head through the hole in the polypropylene chair and had to get the fire service to get it cut out. And you know wherever he goes, that will follow him. Here's another one. You will find people doing stupid things. The question is, when do you tell them? Has anyone here ever had a real problem? You can see a colleague, yeah, that won't work. But you told you. And if you want to have a look at health and safety, just as a laugh, the health and safety executive is based in Buxton, Derbyshire. 800 metres from their headquarters, I took a photograph of this sign. I said, what's all that about? They said, well, we've got to put signs on public footpaths. I said, but there are no destinations. They said, well, that's because some blighter came along and kept rearranging them. I said, so what did you do? So we took the destinations off, so if you rearrange them, it doesn't matter. I said, well, why have you got a bloody camera? They said, we want to catch the blighter. I said, does it matter anymore? Oh, well, good point, I suppose. Has anyone ever found that the health and safety stuff stops you from doing the thing which is right? And actually, it's going to take you so long to do a risk assessment, it's easier not to do it at all. Bingo. So where can that take us? University of Greenwich. CCTV is used in this building for the purpose of crime. I said, are you sure? And they said, absolutely. I said, are you sure it's not for the prevention of crime? Oh yes, silly us, typo. How many of those are there? 500. How long have been there? 2 years. So where can we go? Well, I think that's the difference between leadership and managership. I think it's very easy to be a manager and do all the stuff. Has anybody here ever found that in the average day, you do a lot of stuff, but frankly, some of it's a bit crap? And then have you ever found that in the day, there is something which you do and you go, that's why I do this job? Well, why don't we just cut the crap and do more of the other stuff? Well, I can't because, I'll be in trouble. Well, that, ladies and gentlemen, is what managership is. And so I'm not going to do it, it's leadership. Oh my goodness. So when I talked to his mum, what do you think she said, I hope he'll be? She said, I hope he'll be happy. And I said, you mean happy? She said, actually, I mean more than happy. I want him to be at ease with his life. I want him to be considerate and kind and resourceful and inquisitive and healthy. And actually, more importantly, I want him to be hopeful. I don't see enough people who are hopeful these days. So if we have a look at what we do, so how do we measure all of that? How do we measure hopefulness? How do we measure being kind? How do we measure being resourceful and inquisitive? Has anyone here ever met someone who is dead clever, but they're a bit of an arse? So where can we go with that? Well, if we have a look at this thing about growing a tree and acorns coming from trees, if you look at trees and you sort of look, you'll find there's as much going underneath as there is above. So if we just look at education, we sort of teach maths and history and science and geography, languages and economics and all that sort of stuff, and then we'll give you some certificates as you achieve certain grades. That's a lovely looking tree. Underneath, which we don't see, is all this at ease, considerate, kind, inquisitive, helpful, healthy and hopeful. Have you noticed that? I mean, it's very difficult to go to somebody and say, actually, you've got a lot of maths, but you're not very considerate, so I'm going to mark you down. You're level 2 considerate, you need to get to level 3. Come on. The reality is, if we attack those things down at the bottom, what you end up is you end up with the tree which I buy in a garden centre. It looks great, I plant it, bloody thing dies. Because the tree I should buy is a scrawny thing with decent roots, but I don't feel like buying a stick. Has anybody else ever found this? And when the winds of change come and those things are no longer needed, that's a dead tree. So what you need are those roots. Now I put it to you, where does school and education fit in? And how are we doing measurement and how are we testing things? And what do we say to her about how she's going to build her future? Don't forget, today, in this country, we have 438 universities. We have 48,357 different course codes. We also have 374 different A-levels. So it's not like we don't have choice. But she might want to live in a city of more than 1 million people, so we have 330 of those in the world today. And we have 3,200 cities of more than 100,000 people. So where would you like to live and work? Because that's the opportunity available to anybody, whether they're rich or poor. So are we creating the maximum amount of opportunity? Are we enabling people to create their own destiny? Or are we accidentally getting caught up in their history? And are we trying to fix the deficits in their history rather than helping people find their destiny? And that includes us as people. So where can that take us? I want to do a bit of a test here to see how good we are at separating history from destiny. I want you, by election, to choose one leader who's going to lead the country. Right, let's let them lead the world. Okay, I'm going to give you 4 candidates. Candidate A associates with crooked politicians, consults with astrologists, 2 major affairs, chain smokes, drinks 8 to 10 martinis a day. That's candidate A. Candidate B, kicked out of office twice, sleeps until noon, used opium in college, drinks a bottle and a half of whiskey every evening. Candidate C, decorated war hero, vegetarian, non-smoker, occasional beer, never cheated on anybody. Candidate C, dropped out of college, cheated his friend out of money, impossible to deal with, but some flashes of inspiration. Make your selection. Okay, candidate A. Who votes for candidate A? Go whoop if you vote for candidate A, because we can do it by noise, okay? We'll do this by acclamation. Are you all right with that? Don't be scared of making a slight noise. Associates with crooked politicians, consults with astrologists, 2 major affairs, chain smokes, drinks 8 to 10 martinis a day. Yeah. Candidate B, that was Franklin Roosevelt. Candidate B, kicked out of office twice, sleeps until noon, used opium in college, drinks a bottle and a half of whiskey every evening. Okay, that's Winston Churchill. Decorated war hero, vegetarian, non-smoker, never cheated anybody. Yeah, that's Adolf Hitler. Dropped out of college, cheated his friend out of money, impossible to deal with some flash of inspiration. That's Steve Jobs. Yeah, so we want mavericks, don't we? Isn't that interesting? History or destiny? And then what about society? Is it a job or a role we're trying to ask people to play? And how do we measure success? Here's a great one. Year four kids in a primary school, we gave them iPod touches, we said, go make a movie. They did. They went to the university as well to get taught how to do a 1-camera shoot, a 2-camera shoot, a 3-camera shoot. They tried to see how equipment works and how to use decent lenses. And then they showed them, they made themselves a movie, they shot up 50 hours of material, which they then edited down to 22 minutes, and they showed it at the local cinema. What's their destiny going to be, having done that? More importantly, 600 parents came along to see these year 4s. And I'm not talking about a posh area. I'm talking about a deprived area with high unemployment, all the stuff you've talked about. And suddenly they can see, my goodness, my kids made a movie. Now, where does that go? So how could we measure success? And actually, how should we measure it, ladies and gentlemen? How should we measure it? So we can then observe. We can look what kids are capable of doing. 3 14-year-olds from Alaska giving a conference talk to 1,000 architects about how to design school buildings. Bloody hell. Do you really mean that these kids have got fantastic skill sets? Of course they have. When do we measure it? When do we decide that she's rubbish or she's learned? And how the hell do we do that in this amazing changing world? And if you just look at the changes since 1997, we've had GPS and MP3s and DVDs, we've had Google, all the way down to being able to travel internationally very, very easily. Ladies and gentlemen, this has just happened in the lifespan of someone who's now thinking of doing their GCSEs. So how are we going to help people create their own destiny? And isn't that a fantastic opportunity for having a look at learning? But if you look at the construct which we're working on, we take young people from society, we put them into a ghetto called a school, where they meet with people of their own age, separated up based upon where they were born, then we divide into blocks of time and teach lessons. Then we assess them on some arbitrary stuff, and then at the end of that we launch them back into society to go make it better. You might argue that's a bit bonkers. Really, you might argue it's a bit bonkers. So we have a deficit model, and in most cases in school we require compliance. You're a good kid if you comply. So where does that take us? I'm going to skip through all of this. Excuse me. Well, you get some kids that are like this. The question is, how can you turn them into that? And actually, it's not that hard. Because what we need to do is we need to show them what happens. Just what if students chose their teachers? What if teachers brought in experts? What if we had normal vacation breaks? What if we build on the strengths and we coach people, not just teaching? Actually, how do you measure people who are better than you? Oh, it's not impossible. So we take kids out. Every so often we just sort of see, we take groups of kids just to see what happens. Go and meet the people who run Wallpaper magazine. Go and meet the guy who set up Addison Lee. Go and meet the PricewaterhouseCoopers partners who are creating corporate finance around the world. And just see what happens. What happens is suddenly see, my goodness, that's the world. What do I have to do to get there? Just do my time in school and get GCSEs? Right. That's what I'll do then. So we can let loose. We have to be loose tight though, don't we? Because sometimes we're just tight. And that doesn't give any freedom. Then you can say it's the best we can do, or just the least bad option.
Can you finish that one?
I will. So I'm just going to look at some experiences just for a moment to see our own mindsets. Which of the central circles is bigger? Who thinks it's the one on the left? Who thinks it's the one on the right? Who thinks they're the same size? Yeah. Well, you're wrong. Do you really think I'm that stupid? And this is the problem. We don't even look anymore. Right, here we go. Which of the central circles is bigger? Who thinks it's the one on the left? Who thinks it's the one on the right? Who thinks they're the same size? Not so sure now, are you? Actually, they are the same size. Yes. So there we go, ladies and gentlemen. Take a long, hard look at everything and really make sure you're seeing elephant with 5 legs. So here's the final one. Expand a plus b to the n. Anybody here a mathematician knows that there's a Pascal's triangle running underneath it. If n is 2, it's a squared plus b squared plus 2ab, right? If n is 3, it's a cubed plus 2, no, plus 3a squared b plus 3b squared a plus b cubed, right? And so on. Actually, this kid just expanded. I can go a bit further. Hey, look, there's no limit how far I can go. Etc. Very funny, Peter. Actually, those are the people I want in this world today, don't you? So there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. In a very, 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 very simple way. We have to really look at what we're doing. We have to really see what a kid's destiny is rather than their history. And we have to stop ourselves falling into the trap of believing things like those circles. Because I've seen it before, therefore that's what it is. I'll leave you to it, ladies and gentlemen.